for us, right? But there is some that you can blend in there. Now, propane, again, is a little easier to handle. It's got that high BTU value. So we use about a third of that for petrochemical feedstock, use about a little more than a third for heating and fuel. We use that also for drying grains and lumber and all those kind of things. Even some folks use it for making maple syrup. And then export about 10% of that. That ethane export hasn't shown up on my graph, but it should soon, and it's going to probably work out to anywhere between 6 and 10% as well. Okay, so then we have normal butane. The bulk of that is used as a blend stock for motor gasoline, and I want to emphasize the motor gasoline because we're all used to talking about natural gasoline in this business. There is a portion of that, maybe 8 to 10% that's exported, and then a portion of that, about 25% that's used in petrochemicals. Whereas your isobutane is entirely used as a blend stock for motor gasoline, all right? So we're going to talk a little bit later about the market here and what's happened to the market. I'm not sure that I have my head entirely around where the market's at and where it's going to go. But you can see anything that's used as a blend stock for motor gasoline is probably oversupply, under demanded right now, however you want to state that. And then this natural gasoline, we're going to talk about exactly what is this stuff later, but it's used mostly as a blend stock for motor gasoline. We've got about 8% is used for ethanol denaturing, about 10% for export, and about 10% for petrochemical feedstock, okay? So this ethane in particular drives a tremendous volume of ethylene, but not much else, right? Here's how it affects a market in a natural gas under normal circumstances, which is not what we're in right now from a price perspective. So when I first wrote this, pardon me, this bar chart, I put a modest price of natural gasoline at $2. I think today it's trading about $1.70, $1.72, somewhere around there. So I overshot that. And along with that, you can see those the rich gas increment. So the point of this slide is to point out that when we separate those natural gas liquids into purity products is when we theoretically get the best and highest use out of each one versus selling them as a batch, right? Or rejecting some of them into the gas stream, right? So you can see when that's separated out, fractionated, those costs. But I have to caveat that with, you're going to see a little bit on pricing later on. So I mentioned natural gas is down to about $1.72. Well, our natural gas liquids have been hit even harder because a lot of them tend to mirror on the price of crude oil, right? So again, hopefully we'll discuss that a little bit later. But it shows you a little bit of the added value that occurs when you can fractionate those, use those as purity products at their best and highest use. All right, so I just made this because I'm just very proud of the way our molecules are going up. So these are, again, we're going to have more methane dry gas than anything else, but they're all coming out of the same wellhead there. And not all wells are going to do this. You're not going to see this at every well site. Some go to a centralized place. This one I just like because they make it easy for me to take a picture and say, okay, in usual circumstance, in a gas play, not in an oil play, but in a gas play, our most valuable product there is on our left, condensate, and our least valuable product that produced water is on our right. Okay. So that is coming out at the wellhead, okay? And our heaviest liquids tend to fall out at the wellhead because it is temperature and pressure. And of course, that the pressure and is changing dramatically from downhole to the top of that hole. Okay, so when it comes out, we're going to get a lot of those heavier hydrocarbons are going to come out right at the wellhead. Okay. And so what do you call that in your basin? It might be lease condensate or field condensate, that sort of thing. And the reason why we term it that way is because that's where it comes out. That doesn't strictly define what that product is. It doesn't give it an API value. It's just where it happens to be produced, right? So condensate can come in a pretty wide variety here. We're usually talking pentane plus, and the API gravity is between 45 and 75 degrees. Now, there's a lot of basins out there that sell API 45 oil, and they call it light oil, right? So don't get too caught up in the semantics of the definition of what's light oil and what's condensate. But certainly we see a lot of numbers coming out of parts of the Permian that are 45 and above, and some other basins as well. Now, generally, and this is true for oil and our condensate as well, the lower that number is, the heavier it is, okay? Water is a 10, and all this stuff, no matter how heavy it is going to float on top of water, right? But generally, the lower that number, the heavier it is. And generally, the heavier it is, the better the price. But that's not always true. And it really depends on what our local markets are there for. We certainly see that playing out right now, where our heavier crudes and our heavier condensates are commanding a higher price. And this happens to be, I believe this was Friday's pricing in the Appalachian Basin. And I just gave you a little bit of comparison, historic comparison, just from some other dates where I happened to have done this presentation and pulled this up. So back when oil prices were nice and high in 2014, I think we were sitting at $110 a barrel type of average price. You can see that heaviest condensate was just under $100. If you'll recall, back when we had an oil, when oil fell off the cliff a little bit there in 2015, we were about a third of that price. And that was, boy, is that low, right? Now this fall, we were settling in a little higher prices, but then you can see that point on Friday where the heaviest condensate was $21.76 a barrel, right? So that's a dreadfully low price, and that's really going to follow and track hard with the price of crude oil. Natural gas kind of decoupled from the price of crude oil a few years ago, so we don't always have a direct correlation there. But our condensates tend to track with crude oil quite a lot. Now take a look at that middle price then for that 50 to 59 API Utica, Marcellus Utica Light, trading at spot price averaged at $12.76. And then if you look at that lightest condensate, right, that's 60 and above, again, back in 2014, that was a valuable barrel, right? We got $75 for it. Even when it fell off a cliff in 2015, we were looking at $15, and on Friday it was trading at $1.76. We're going to talk a little bit about what some of the downward pressures are on all these markets. The West Texas Intermediate was trading on that same day at about $22.76. Okay, so that should be that West Texas Intermediate should be similar API value to that Marcellus Utica Medium that we have up there. So about the same API and about the same price, right? Just to give you some indication, and I just kind of randomly chose oil from different spots to give you some notion of what those API values are and compared. One of the biggest oil producers in the world, of course, is Saudi Arabia. And you can see where they have a lot of different variety there. They trade under 5 different grades there. Our Brent oil is sitting at about 38. I've got a couple from Canada sitting in there. I see you've got some really heavy oil. Midway Sunset, that's some heavy stuff sitting at 13. If you think about water being 10, that's some really heavy stuff. Those of you out in the Niobrara, you're just shy of 40. Then these West Texas Intermediate, you can see 38 to 42. West Texas Light is at 45 to 50. Now you're getting into that lighter condensate range as we're classifying it. And your Bakken crude is sitting 40 to 43. Just, I'm sorry if I didn't include your basin. I probably should have done the homework, but couldn't fit too much on the page. So looking at these natural gas liquid prices, Mont Belvieu is kind of the trading hub there in Texas. There's probably some folks on the phone nearby there. And it really started to fall from January to March because of coronavirus, right? But then we also had this OPEC / Russia battle, which is basically, my interpretation, a contest between Russia and Saudi Arabia as to whether or not we're going to release more production onto the market. Of course, Saudi Arabia can produce oil cheaper than any basin in the world. And so there seems to be a little geopolitical game of chicken going on. There are negotiations right now, but this compounded with a dramatic drop in consumption of crude oil in the U.S., where we are the biggest consumers by far, is really driving that market down and keeping it lower. Nice effect of that from a consumer standpoint is I'm not filling up the tank very often. I don't know about you, but when I do, I'm pleased it's there. Well, along with that oil, of course, we have seen ethane, propane spot prices fallen off even more since EIA released this. Okay. Just a quick comparison. Again, a great EIA chart that kind of shows that left portion of the graph is showing kind of that crash of 2008 and what happened with our energy prices, okay? So you can see crude oil, propane, ethane, natural gas there. If you compare that with now, you could see, we started, relatively low in April 19th, and we are still going down. And those graphs, if we could draw that out further, they continue to go down right now. So we might expect that. Natural gas, the dry natural gas hasn't been hit as hard as the other in terms of a percentage drop, but really started pretty low to begin with. We were looking at a fairly warm winter across North America, and we have a lot of production going on. Both from gas fields, but also associated gas from oil fields, right? So now switching gears just a little bit, going to take you on a little bit of a path of natural gas liquids. So I've got these slides maybe a little out of order, but I showed you at the wellhead those heaviest hydrocarbons, our field condensate, lease condensate dropped out. And so in most cases, we are shipping that natural gas to a compressor station, right? We need to pressurize this gas to get onto its final destination. And as you might guess, when we add pressure at a compressor station, we're going to have more natural gas liquids drop out, okay? So this is a farm in Butler County, where they have this compressor station, and you can see those tanks. Some of those are produced water. We're still getting some produced water out of there, and some of those are what some folks in the field refer to as drip gas or natural gasoline. We might expect this to have a little, to be a little lighter, have a little higher API value than that leach condensate we were looking at before, right? Sometimes producers are listing these as petroleum products or natural gasoline. So it's really kind of hard to track how much is coming from each place. All right, I made this cartoon for you. I hope you enjoy it. It took me forever. It's embarrassing how long it took. But this is just showing you we've got this mixed natural gas liquids pipeline coming into a fractionation plant, okay? I have some towers missing from this because we're going to put this through a cryogenic process where we're really going to separate out the dry gas, that methane, from all the wet gases. And we're going to send that along in a pipeline for our dry gas, right? Usually they're going to co-locate this stuff with a fractionation plant, but we've seen before where they haven't, where you just have a cryogenic plant kind of sitting out on its own, and you're sending those natural gas liquids along. So let's explain how this works. So in these places, these crude models I made represent towers. And we've got a tower where each of those is going to boil off at a different temperature. So we have a de-ethanizer, de-propanizer, de-butanizer. We also have a de-isobutanizer I didn't show there. And that's very close to butane, but they do boil off at different temperatures. And then what comes out the back end is what we're going to refer to as plant condensate. So anything that was too heavy that stayed at the bottom of those stacks through de-ethanizer, propanizer, butanizer, isobutanizer is going to come out the other end as a plant condensate. Again, that doesn't assign it any particular value. It's just where it was placed. So stay with me here. This gives me chills. All right, I'm sure it will you too as we watch the molecules separate. Oh boy, here we go. I don't know if you're excited as I am, but there we go. There we go. I mean, that took me hours, so I hope you enjoyed it. That's why I showed it twice. All right. So here's a picture. You can tell it's mine because it's really fuzzy and a bad picture. But this is, I believe, an ethane tower, and that's going to boil out the top while your heavier gases remain at the bottom. So that's just a pictorial of the cartoon on the previous slide, right? This is from Mark West's stuff. This is a fractionation plant, so you can see a lot of those towers and boilers, et cetera, going on. These days, a lot of these fractionation plants are really kind of plug and play. If they have to build another one, they don't generally re-engineer a lot of this stuff. They can really go. It's a pretty slick process. So the cost of fractionation, and I got this figure from somewhere. I hope it's still accurate. It's about 5 cents a gallon. Okay, so that's the cost involved. So producers really have to decide, is it worth it or not, right? So in places where we're producing ethane, and they don't have a cracker plant nearby, if it is economical, then they're going to have to find a place to pipe that to existing cracker plants. And I say ship it, that's got to be through pipeline. We really don't carry ethane through any other vessel except when we're exporting it. And boy, a few years ago, I would say, no, you can't do it except through a pipeline. Well, somebody came along and proved me wrong. And this is the part whether we're producing oil or we're producing natural gas in our basins, we have a fair amount of excess ethane. And again, if it doesn't have a home, if it doesn't have a market, it can become a little bit of a management challenge. And so, given that ethane is a beautiful feedstock to make ethylene, which is a beautiful feedstock to make polyethylene, there are 7 new ethane crackers that got started, not finished, in North America in that 2017 to 2019 timeframe. And there's 6 new ethane crackers that have been proposed, not built, not even final investment decision on some of these, between 2020 and 2024. So, we already had a number of ethane crackers that existed primarily on the Gulf Coast. And, now we're going to add 7 and maybe 13 new ones. So that could be a shock to our system, maybe provide a home for ethane being produced, but also maybe maybe have a marketing challenge in what are we going to do with all this polyethylene that we produce, right? So just showing you that ethane rejection kind of exists everywhere. So this is where the most cracker plants are in North America, is right on this Gulf Coast. And you can see that chart on the right shows you how much ethane rejection we're talking about here. And so this only goes through July of 2019, but I'm sure it's continued on. And we're hitting over 300 million barrels a day, right? So that's a lot. That's a lot of rejection going on, right? Here's a look at the Appalachian Basin and the various places where they've been able to offload. What's remarkable here is, up until I believe 2013, there was no place to sell ethane if you were producing ethane in this basin. And now there is all of these outlets, so we can ship that up to Sarnia. We can ship that down to the Gulf Coast. And then the most recent one I mentioned is now we're shipping it overseas to Norway and Scotland and so forth. So if you take a look at any of the basins, and I would call out, for example, the Bakken in North Dakota, looking at the Permian out there, when you get in West Texas and New Mexico, when you get to these remote places, then you have to either build the pipeline or build the factory, and both of them are expensive propositions. And there is a fair answer for why don't we build an ethane cracker out in the middle of the Bakken field or in the middle of the Permian Basin. And that is, the product that comes out of there also has to be transported, and that's not the cheapest and easiest thing to do too. Oh, look, there's my ship. So what someone did is they found a way to ship this gas, ethane, economically to be able to do that. And it's still, I have no idea what the cost of that shipping is. It has to be unbelievably high, but it's still economical for those European countries to take that, right? So here's a rendering of a cracker plant as we see it. There's a couple things that occur at a cracker plant, which we'll get into. You can see, I got a little lazy pulling my yellow molecules in there, but you get the, so there's a couple things that occur at the cracker plant. The initial cracking, okay? Intense heat and pressure for a brief moment. We're talking about 1500 degrees Fahrenheit for a brief moment, and it's going to crack that molecule. And then what happens is we have 15, oh, there it is. We're going to turn that from a single bond into a double bond. And from there, we're going to, oh, I do have that animation working. All right. Those hydrogen atoms go off and form a stable hydrogen molecule. A double bond is formed, and but we still really can't do anything with this. We have to do something different, right? So now we have ethylene, okay, and that's great. But now we have to take the second part, add an additive there to make a long chain polymer, right? And most of that stuff is going to be turned into polyethylene. So just to give you some quick numbers here, about 2/3 of that ethane is going to be turned into that ethylene, and about 2/3 or more, probably more like 80–90% of that is going to be turned into polyethylene, right? So that's a lot of stuff. So this map shows you polyethylene consumption by state. But when you think consumption, you tend to think of who uses it, right? But these are converters, and converters just means they're taking those pellets and making them into something else. So there's a great big trash bag manufacturer up near Cleveland, Ohio, probably more than one. That doesn't mean that Cleveland, Ohio is using more trash bags than anyone else. That just means that they're making a lot more than anyone else. So the end use on these things, okay, is people, right? So that's why I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you put your cracker plant where you can reach people by truck or train with those end products, whether that's, plastic jugs. So all of your milk jugs are usually made from high density polyethylene, and trash bags, saran wrap. A lot of your food products, really it's polypropylene and polyethylene are your safer food products. So a lot of those are used in this. So you can see where locating closer to population might make sense, right? So how much ethane is there? And I just kind of calculated this out for the Appalachian Basin. I probably shouldn't be so lazy, and I should do this for every basin, but this just gives you an example that we're currently estimating about 410,000 barrels per day at today's production, right? Now, we're never going to get to 100% recovery of ethane. It's not economical. It's not practical to do so, right? But just to show you where we're at then, if you think at today's production, without increasing production, what we're selling right now, and we're selling this, down to mostly the Gulf Coast, but also to Sarnia, Ontario, also shipping that overseas. We're marketing about 153,000 barrels per day. If we add 2 cracker plants to this region, we're still going to top out at about 335,000 barrels per day. So we'll still have some ethane rejection. And as you can imagine, if you're going to expend $6 or $7 billion putting one of these plants in, you want to make sure that your supply is going to be plentiful, right? And the reason why your supply is so important to you is because most of the cost of manufacturing polyethylene is your feedstock, right? All right, we talked about this a little bit, but that polyethylene, these polymer scientists are geniuses. When they change something, there's going to be that's so that it can do something bigger and better and better. So we have someone who comes along and says, hey, when I put this on a piece of film wrap that covers up chicken, now we can keep chicken on the grocery store shelf for 2 more days, okay? And that's usually a different catalyst, a different additive that goes in there to make that happen. So there's about 10,000 different grades of polyethylene that's currently on the market, right? And every year about 1,000 new ones come on the market and about 1,000 old ones go off the market. You're either saving money or making money when you make, when you make that new polymer, right? It has to be one or the other. The more unique and engineered a product is, generally the higher you can charge, but you also have these volumes to deal with. So it's, it's price times volume when it comes to this. So we're usually not going to see each of those cracker plants produce, 10,000 or even 1,000 different grades. Most new plants are probably going to start with about 60 grades. And then we might expect some business to blossom up around these cracker plants, compounders that are going to take this, melt it, change it, repelletize it. So all those type of things might occur. So some common uses, The manufacturing process of film, injection molding, blow molding, extrusion. Most common of these is film, right? And then we have our different types of our grades of polyethylene: high density, low density, linear low density. And that depends what we want that product to do. So if we want a nice rigid garbage can or 5-gallon bucket, we're going to make that out of high density. I think we use blow molding to make milk jugs and those kind of things out of high density, because we don't want that stuff to squish around. Whereas we have stuff like squeezable bottles, ketchup bottles, we have stretch film. We want that to react just a little bit differently. Right now in this environment with coronavirus and all that kind of stuff, you might guess that some of these products are not flying off the shelves, right? But at the same time, you might guess that some of them are flying off the shelves even faster than they normally would. So it's a weird time in the plastic industry. Just for kicks, if you happen to be playing along at home, most domestic plastics, this is voluntary. They will put a recycling stamp on the bottom of them. When you see a number 2 or number 4, that's usually polyethylene. Usually if that was manufactured in the States these days, it's going to be come from a feedstock of ethane, but not always, right? So, and then logistics is what it's all about. Going to use rail to ship a lot of polyethylene pellets. That's how when you saw that map, there may or may not be a cracker near those converter locations. If we're using large volumes like we would making garbage bags, those Walmart bags, saran wrap, those type of things, we're taking train loads of polyethylene pellets into these plants, right? But trucking is going to occur. It's going to make sense in a certain spot, and manufacturers there kind of could find a sweet spot by kind of being able to receive the pellets on a cheaper basis, but also ship that end product cheaper. We do have this robust rail system in the U.S. And so this is where those of you folks who I said earlier, maybe it doesn't make sense to have a cracker plant in the Bakken or in the Permian. This is where you could make a case, hey, if we can hop on this rail system and ship it anywhere, then you're not outside the market. So I'll build a case for you there, right? All right, so this is for one new cracker. If we have a new cracker come online, we're going to average about that, and we're going to get about 18,000 rail cars per year. They're going to average about 97 net tons per car. You can see trucks are going to be able to carry only about 20 or 22 tons. That's why it's a little more economical to do it if you can manage that size of loads. So these new cracker plants that come online, we could expect easily 50 rail cars per day of polyethylene pellets coming. I don't know if they do that on a daily basis or if they batch them in 200. I'm really not that involved in that business, but I did get to go out and tour some rail yards and ride, do a little bit of riding with those folks. It was great. These cracker plants might need additional ethane as they get built, so we might see a little more drilling for that. Probably going to need additional de-ethanization, probably going to need a lot more additional pipeline. Underground storage hub, when they get going, there can't really be a delay. So it's best when there's nearby underground storage. And then, of course, all those other things that kind of fit the other end of that business. So I'm about done here, but let's talk a little bit. Let me speculate, if you will, what the future is going to bring. So right now we're seeing a market that's pretty hard on crude oil, so pretty hard on condensates, pretty hard on natural gas liquids in general. When will we see that let up? Well, there's a couple things worth noting. Right now we are in the shoulder season when it comes to energy use. particularly for homes and so forth. We don't use as much heat this time of year. We don't use as much electricity to power air conditioners and so forth. So this spring and fall are always a soft time in the energy market, in the power business. Compounding that, we've got kind of this geopolitical thing going on with crude oil between Russia and Saudi Arabia and U.S. shale producers. And then we have this tremendous drop in demand going on caused by coronavirus, COVID-19. So if we were to predict the future, what's going to occur, it's not going to be like a light switch. I think we know that, right? We're not going to turn it on one day and suddenly have great demand. But I think, maybe over the next few months, we're going to see the lights coming on a little bit slower. We're going to see demand rise just a little bit higher. Even if we have a really hot summer and need to run our air conditioners, if people aren't at work, we'll use less, and we'll use less industrial gases and so forth. So this will probably be a slow recovery for energy producers. And what does that mean? Well, right now, most of them are cutting their capital expenditures. I would say there probably are a few companies out there, more than a few companies out there that are in financial distress. How deep are their pockets? How deep is the credit market? What's everyone's appetite for investing in those industries? Hard to tell. We might see some of those industries fold a tent or go bankrupt, scraps being picked up by others. And I'm not sure how that might affect you folks as regulators. I know just from casual observation, when times are good and everyone's rich and there's a problem, our energy producers will spend a fortune to fix that problem, even if they're not positive it's theirs. When times get tough, things get cut. Hopefully shortcuts aren't taken and so forth. But, we'll see, but we can expect probably to see a continuation of pain for the next several months. Certainly, if Russia and Saudi Arabia and other OPEC nations reach an accord, we might see a little lightening up, but pain will continue in this industry, it looks like, for a little while. Hope I'm wrong about that. Folks, thank you for joining me. I'm going to stop my share and we can have a chat or whatever you want to do at this point.
Hey, Dan, I sent you some excellent questions that we got from the group. You might, if you're able to pull up your chat pod, instead of me just reading them to you, you might want to just take a cruise and look at them there. We had some excellent comment, and I'll just thank you first, Dan, for that presentation. You had a lot of information. And I'd also say that we had some great comments made in the chat box. So if if you as a participant are sitting out there, you might want to just go in there and review some of them, because there's some good questions, or comments that were made. And yeah. Dan, you might I don't know if you can see those questions that I forwarded on to you. We do only have a few minutes left, so yep. I'll give you the leniency to pick and choose whatever.
Okay, I appreciate that. I see a question from.
Sorry, we have a poll. Would you mind if we did the poll?
Yeah, please. So Danny's going to put up a poll. If you just take a moment and tell us how much you enjoyed this or didn't enjoy this. Okay, I asked Dana to make the scale. I really loved it, or I just loved it. But it's hard to deal with these folks. So James asked a really good question, and I realized I didn't explain myself very well on ethane rejection. Are we just flaring that gas or what? No, most of the time ethane rejection means that we are putting that into the natural gas stream, okay? There's a limitation on that, though. So most of our pipeline for natural gas is going to top out at 1,100 BTU. Can't exceed that. it is a little different from one pipeline to the next, but roughly around 1100 BTU. So we can put that ethane into that natural gas line as long as we're not exceeding 1100 BTU. So think about it this way: if I have if I have a lot of methane in that line and I'm about 1000 BTU and I can put some ethane in that line, I can raise the value of that gas, all right, by pulling it up, but not as high of a value as I usually get from selling purity ethane, okay? So no, really it isn't common practice to just flare that ethane. Ethane rejected, it's not like having a badly made widget in your widget factory. It's still used. It's just not used at its best and highest use. And it's usually a little bit of a logistical management problem there as we try to put it into the gas line there, okay? So, okay, yep. There's some good comments in there like that. I'm looking for a good, I'm looking for an easy question.
Hey, Dan, if you pull up I tried to put them all in one place if that made it any easier for you.
And where would that place be, John?
There's a list of about 4 that I sent to you in the chat box, not the Q&A, but the chat box.
Okay, and yeah, John, I'm not, should I go to, is that gonna help? Hey, thank you if you're promoting my dry oil comment that I made. I'd like to get that started.
How about if I ask you one of them?
Okay, great.
Okay, so I think you answered this one. Do you know if rejected ethane is being vented or flared? Do you think you handled that? What makes condensate? What makes condensate valuable?
Because it has a higher BTU value. Again, it has, so for the same volume of gas, I'm going to get about 4 times the amount of BTU from condensate that I'm going to get from dry natural gas. Now, I want to put that compared to crude oil, and that doesn't hold up as much, all right? And I don't know if I emphasized this at the beginning, but you know, kind of opposite ends of the spectrum here, where we're going to, you know, fractionate our natural gas when we have our liquids. We're going to refine, from refining crude is where we're going to draw off our natural gas liquids for those of you in an oil play, right? So kind of the same product, kind of coming from 2 different ends. But in the natural gas world, the higher the BTU, the more value it has generally. That always changes on a spot market basis and always is going to change based on how far you have to transport things, right?
Hey, Dan, thank you for that. I think we'll quit there. And if you wouldn't mind sharing the last 2 slides, I'll just make a comment and promote the next webinar that's coming up. So with that, thank you to all of you who took the time out of your day to join us. We appreciate that, and we hope you found it informative. We will be back on this Thursday afternoon, and I'm sorry for this confusion also. We are trying to maintain a consistent time of being here about 1:30 Eastern time in the afternoon for an hour, and again, supported by the people on that previous slide, but this Thursday at 1:30 Eastern time, another colleague of ours who's the director of the Marcellus Center for Outreach and Research is going to do a presentation on energy markets domestically and globally. What's going on, where are we headed, and what's driving that story. So again, you'll get an email with the registration link. We really appreciate you taking the time to register and sharing it with those people that you think might be interested as well. And with that, I'm going to thank Dana and Dan for your presentation today and for all of you that participated and asked great questions and contributed to making this go very smoothly today. So thank you and have a great afternoon, and we'll see you all again Thursday, we hope. So long.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Dana, and thank everybody out there. Appreciate it.